The governor of Texas bans virtually all vaccine mandates. Lego vows to remove gender stereotypes from its toys. And could you run 6 marathons in 6 weeks? I'm cramping up just thinking about it. Tuesday Need to Know. Let's go. Good morning, this is Cheddar's Need to Know podcast for Tuesday, October 12th. I'm Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Hey, Carlo.
Good morrow, my friend. How are you? Are you enjoying our Indian summer here? It's like crazy, isn't it?
Well, this weekend was not great, but this coming week is supposed to be basically high 70s, almost 80s.
Yeah. It seems a little hot for this late in the game here. The mosquitoes, I don't know if anyone else has noticed this, but the mosquitoes are just insane. I'm not used to getting mosquito bites in the middle of October.
I'm with you. I had to cancel my daughter's birthday party, though, this weekend because of the rain. So we are rescheduling for one of these summer days coming up.
Well, you sent me that funny picture of her with her toys that we'll talk about in a minute. But happy birthday to Alex, if she's listening.
All right, let's get to some news here. By the way, she's 100% not listening. Doesn't even know this exists. Actually, no, my husband plays it in the car sometimes on the way to school, and she actually will say, "Hi, Carlo."
Oh, God, that breaks my heart. It's so cute.
Okay, Texas Governor Greg Abbott has issued an executive order banning any entity, including private businesses, from issuing COVID vaccine mandates. It's the biggest order yet, prohibiting vaccine requirements. Abbott is asking the state legislature to codify the order into law. The broad order, which is likely to go to court, comes as the White House prepares to start enforcement of its vaccine or test mandate for employers with more than 100 workers.
OSHA is the agency responsible for enforcing that, which is going to be a very big task for them. That's a pretty small federal agency. They only have a few hundred inspectors that will be in charge of enforcing this around the country. So that's going to be something we got to watch to see how they pull that off. But back to Abbott for a minute. I mean, even putting aside like the blatant hypocrisy and the cynicism of this, I mean, the whole point of the Republican Party is supposed to be shielding private employers from like so-called government overreach, right, and giving them freedom to make their own rules. But more important than that, I mean, we're going to end this pandemic that has killed more than 700,000 of our fellow citizens and was only brought under control through the miracle of vaccines. We're going to end it with fewer vaccine requirements and less trust in vaccines going forward. I mean, I really think that that's going to end up being one of the big takeaways from the entire coronavirus, right? I mean, our asses saved by science only to become more skeptical of science, right? I mean, you really got to hand it to us.
I think this is like how they predict empires falling. I mean, for real.
Seriously, I don't know what else to say about it at this point, right?
I think one of the interesting exercises in this is if you can just try to imagine that the tables were turned. So just say that Trump had won the election, had doubled down on vaccines, had been pushing them like crazy, was arguing that that's the only way we're going to get the economy back open and keep people safe. I mean, look, he deserves credit for Operation Warp Speed,
sure.
Which helped develop some of these vaccines in absolutely record time. What would the political landscape look like? Would there be a backlash from liberals who were just like, Trump, leave us alone. You can't mandate that I'm getting a vaccine for my kids, or whatever it is.
It's one of the great thought experiments.
Yeah, it's a thought experiment nothing for nothing, but it's fascinating to just think about. Okay, while the FDA has a full plate, Merck has now requested an emergency authorization for its antiviral COVID pill after that drug showed compelling results in trials. So should that happen, Merck's already agreed to supply the U.S. with 1.7 million courses of treatment and says that it's going to double its manufacturing capacity for this pill next year.
Before that can happen, the FDA is going to meet later this week to decide on what to do about boosters for the Moderna and Johnson & Johnson vaccines. So that's going to be something we got to watch. I think that meeting is scheduled for Thursday. It'll be especially interesting to hear what they have to say about Johnson & Johnson, just given that that was a one-dose vaccine and all of the clotting issues related to that. So we'll keep an eye on that, probably have some news on that by the end of the week.
Wanted to quickly mention that as of right now, the pricing for that Merck pill, it's about $700 per for the
patient,
full
yeah.
course of the pills, because you need about 4 a day, and you take, I'm not sure how long you take it for, but it's not cheap. It's not, and it's not a silver bullet. It's only about 50% effective if taken early enough. So the best, the goal is that this is not going to deter people from getting the vaccine even more, thinking, oh, there's like a drug here that's going to help. We need all this together.
Exactly.
Southwest Airlines' operational meltdown continued into the week. The carrier canceling hundreds more flights yesterday, about 10% of its planned departures after a weekend in which a third of its schedule failed to take off. Southwest, its pilot union, and the FAA have all denied that the cancellations were because of sick outs in protest of its vaccine mandate. What is going on here? Like, this is a wild story.
It is. Southwest has reiterated that it started with bad weather and air traffic control disruptions in Florida. And I mean, if you've reported on any of these things in the past, I mean, this kind of stuff does happen, and it's like this cascading effect, right? Because people get booked on other flights, and then those flights get canceled, and then all of a sudden you've got thousands of people that need to be rebooked, and there's not enough planes to put them on. I think especially for some of these low budget carriers that just don't have a lot of extra bandwidth. So I don't know. I don't know if there's something more to it or if it's just that. But I admit I was having a little bit of like travel FOMO lately, because I don't think I've left New York State in like going on 2 years now. Right? I think no. I take that back. I think I went to the IKEA in New Jersey once last summer. But seriously, I haven't gone anywhere. I don't think really anybody has. Although I shouldn't say that, because people are taking planes again. I mean, the TSA numbers are certainly up. But man, every time one of these stories comes out, I am just so happy to not be dealing with this. I think I'm going to become like a recluse and just not even bother with trying to deal with the airline industry anymore. It's
funny you say that, because I've not traveled either. We were possibly planning to do something around February for the February break, maybe go down to Florida. But I don't even contemplate taking a plane. And when I'm looking at any sort of vacation, it's driving distance only at this point, because of these horror stories. Although there's a lot of people who are flying and say it's absolutely fine. Yeah. This is what's interesting, though, about this Southwest story. So the FAA, which doesn't comment on a whole lot, and pardon my rollers situation here, they came out and actually said there's no issue with air traffic control. Okay, so like they kind of came out to refute what the Southwest said. And weather issues, that is not a problem that hits one airline. A weather issue hits a specific airport. Maybe there are then ripple effects. And yes, some airlines are better equipped to handle it because they have bigger fleets, et cetera. Right. So, but if no one else had a weather issue, then this wasn't a weather issue. Southwest, I will say, typically runs lean. So that means if somebody is out sick or there's some, a misscheduling, then it is a problem. Sometimes it becomes a bigger problem than perhaps at a different airline. Andrew Ross Sorkin tweeted yesterday, reminder, Southwest Air accepted $3.2 billion from taxpayers. That money kept its pilots employed during the pandemic. It also made Southwest Air the first airline to post a profit. And now, apparently, many of those pilots don't want to help society by getting vaccinated. Did they have a bigger problem than other airlines with pilots not getting vaccinated? I don't know. I'll have to look into that. But it's certainly food for thought, for sure. I think it just comes down to these staffing shortages, right? It's happening everywhere you go, from, restaurants to the airlines. There's just not enough people working these jobs. One thing I want to point out, I was listening to this report on ABC News, and first of all, not everyone on these planes is going on vacation to sit on the beach in Florida. Okay, there are people who are going like for funerals, for doctor's appointments across the country. Yeah. This is not in some of these cases it's life or death. So this isn't just like when we talk about the same way with elective surgeries being postponed, and we're like, it's not just nose jobs and tummy tucks, it's real surgery. So when you're talking about people who are on their way to travel, yes, maybe the bulk of them, a flight to Vegas, yes, maybe they're going to party or whatever. But a lot of these flights are taking people to really important things, especially now. A lot of people still nervous to fly. If they're getting on a plane, they probably have somewhere pretty darn important to go. So you're actually messing with people's lives. I think that was my main point. I just got very fired up about it. I can't remember what the second thing was. Oh, and then anecdotally, they interviewed somebody who said he was waiting to go on a flight, and a pilot passed him, and the passenger said, well, what's going on? What's with the delays? And the pilot said, I'm not getting the vaccine, and stormed out. I don't know if this is true or not, but this was the report that I just listened to on ABC.
These guys, honestly, they should. I think I said this before. That Biden should just pull a Reagan here. I don't even know if he can do this, but just fire all these guys and hire new ones.
The problem is there was a pilot shortage even before the pandemic.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Okay, Lego pledging to remove gender bias from its toys after internal research found that girls and boys were being hampered by gender stereotypes when they decided what to play with. A study commissioned by Lego suggested that girls were becoming more open to playing with a wider variety of toys, but boys were still afraid that they'd be made fun of if they played with girls' toys. It's not exactly clear what Lego plans to do to combat those stereotypes.
This coming on the heels of a new law in California that was passed this weekend by Governor Newsom, mandating that big retailers in that state have to provide.
I think you said Gavin or Newsom, which I appreciate because it's sort of this hybrid of Gavin and Governor.
I said something. Misspoke on the podcast yesterday now, and I meant to make a point of it. I forgot what I said, but it was something very stupid. Anyway. Whatever. Anyway, what was I saying? Okay, California, Governor Newsom in California mandating that big retailers have to provide gender-neutral toy aisles. That's a rule that's going to go into place in 2024. This was kind of a Newsom PC special, but Republicans had opposed it as an example, like we were talking about, of government overreach. This is one of those issues I probably never thought about more than like 10 seconds in my entire life until I became a dad, and now I find this very fascinating. The idea that the toys that you play with develop some of these skills that then become important to you later in life, right? Like, spatial awareness, right? Math. And a lot of these toys are marketed in a specific way, I guess, that to keep that from happening, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's the toy manufacturers, but it's parents, too, which reinforce these gender stereotypes. Sure. I mean, you could buy PJs, right? You could go to Gap or wherever you buy your pajamas, and you could go... they have a girls section, a boys, at least online, and then a gender neutral, and you could pick out whatever you want. I was thinking about this. So my daughter was always into cars, which I guess are not typically girly toys. So she was always.
She has a great Matchbox car collection.
And it's my dad always just gave her these cars, and she loved them. And now she's really into Paw Patrol. Which I don't know, you're definitely not there yet. But I think Paw Patrol's unisex. I think it's universally enjoyable. And I love it because she's learning all of these technical terms because the pups solve problems and they fix things and they talk about the names of tools and stuff. She said to me the other day, she's like, I think you need a screwdriver for that. I'm like, where did you learn what a screwdriver is? And
Phillips head or flathead?
She says Rocky has one, which is one of the pups. So I was very excited about that. But I see it all the time, right? Because I'm trying to get my daughter to go to also dance class. She's the only one. She does not want to wear the leotard. She's just like, I don't need a costume. I don't want to wear the costume. And in some ways, I'm like, you are ahead of your time, girl. I mean,
I love it.
And and there's a picture with all the girls in the leotards. And part of me is so frustrated because I just want her to join and have fun. But the other part of me is thinking, let her be her, right? Like, she's going to just do what she wants to do and figure it out. And I feel like, look, I always had an older brother and just basically worshipped him and wanted to do what he did. And that was boy stuff, and it doesn't, and it's good because it opens you up to different things. So it is a fascinating debate, and it is fascinating how these toys are marketed. We were trying to get her to not be super into princesses just because the idea of princesses.
Becky's the same.
At least when we were growing up, it was just like a princess got rescued by a prince. Now it's different, right? Now you have now you've got Frozen and Moana, and it's a much different representation of what a princess should be, and it's much more girl powered, and it's awesome. But we were trying to sort of steer her away from that, and she's found it and loves it. Okay, so
I guess there's only so much you can do.
You can only do so much,
Yeah, Becky's very much like that, and she dresses Franny in like all black, like she's like a little beatnik.
Yeah. Well, my husband, because I'm at work early in the morning, so my husband gets Alex ready for school, and he dresses her like how a dad would dress their girl. He dressed her like a little tomboy, and I think it's adorable. But then we'll post pictures for family to see, and my mom will be like, "Why isn't she wearing a dress like everybody else?" And I'm like, just let her live. You know, she's happy.
Exactly.
But it's a fascinating discussion from how young some of these roles and stereotypes are ingrained in our children.
Totally,
And it's worthy almost of a full podcast. I'd love to hear what everyone thinks. I mean, I don't. Yeah. Every parent has to make the decisions that they think are right for their kids, and I think ultimately the kids will find what they like and what they don't like. Right? I mean, I think everyone eventually figures out what they enjoy and what they're good at.
Yeah, I loved Legos. I still do.
Netflix is taking advantage of the popularity of shows like Squid Game with a new e-commerce hub in partnership with Walmart. Netflix fans can visit the dedicated hub on Walmart.com to find merch related to their favorite shows and movies, from Squid Game shirts to a Stranger Things-inspired cassette player. The Walmart hub marks Netflix's biggest expansion yet of its retail business, and it comes as the streamer faces slowing subscriber growth in the U.S.
Also, just on the Netflix beat, I wanted to do a quick follow-up on the Chappelle story, which we were talking about on Friday, I believe. Netflix yesterday suspending 3 employees for crashing a meeting of its top executives that included an out trans person who criticized that comedy special by Dave Chappelle. That's according to sources talking to Variety. That also coming as Ted Sarandos continuing to defend David Chappelle in a memo to his employees, the co-CEO of Netflix, saying that special did not cross a line into hate, and that stand-up comedy should be afforded some sort of like extra measure of artistic freedom, which I agree with. And I actually gave him a lot of credit for that statement, because a lot of times I think in this sort of these sort of cases of wokeism, CEOs fold very quickly. And I think it was nice that he actually stood up for this, regardless of what you actually think about the jokes that Chappelle was making.
John Gruden has resigned as coach of the Las Vegas Raiders amid a growing scandal over racist, misogynistic, and homophobic emails that he had sent when he was a broadcaster on ESPN. Gruden's trouble started last week when the Wall Street Journal reported on a racist trope that Gruden's used in an email from 2011 that surfaced during an unrelated NFL internal investigation. The New York Times then reported last night that Gruden used offensive language in numerous other instances.
That included calling the NFL commissioner Roger Goodell a, quote, faggot and a, quote, clueless anti-football pussy, end quote. He also made disparaging comments about Michael Sam, who was the first openly gay NFL player, as well as Caitlyn Jenner and President Biden. He is now gone. Once again, for the people in the back, never write anything in an email that you would be embarrassed to see on the front page of a national newspaper, as this guy is learning today.
Benson Kipruto and Diana Kipyego of Kenya won the Boston Marathon, the 4th of the world's 6 major marathons that are being crammed into a 42-day window this fall because of a pandemic postponements. The American long-distance runner Shailene Flanagan decided early on that she would attempt to complete all 6 races in under 3 hours each. She's getting close to achieving that goal after completing Berlin and London in under 2 hours and 40 minutes. Geez, the Massachusetts native ran in Chicago on Sunday in 2 hours, 46 minutes, and 39 seconds, then immediately flew to Boston, where she ran her hometown race yesterday with a time of 2:40 and 34 seconds. Whoa. I mean, listen, I'm a marathon runner. I cannot imagine doing this.
Yeah. Yeah, that was my question. I mean, I get exhausted just reading this or just listening to you talk about this. I can't even imagine. But next up for Flanagan, and this is a great story to follow. She's going to do the Tokyo Marathon next weekend, which she will compete in virtually from Oregon because of Oregon. I know everyone always gets mad at me when I say Oregon. Then she'll do the big one, New York City Marathon, which is coming up next month. But man, doing a marathon 2 days in a row, how do your legs even hold up?
I just hope that they don't get injured. I mean, because that's not really, I think, what you're supposed to be doing. I read this great book, Born to Run. It was all the rage a few years ago, and it brought, have you ever seen people do barefoot running with, where they have the basically they wear just like the 5-toe type of shoes.
Yeah.
It's an amazing book, and it makes the arguments that actually we're all born to run. Like we are. That's what we did. That's how we evolved as humans. We weren't faster than other animals, but we could outrun them because we had a lot more endurance. Like you're not going to beat whatever animal in a sprint, but you could outrun them. So that our bodies were actually built for long distance running. So I used to think that I was doing serious damage to my body by doing long distance running, but I don't think that's the case. However, this amount of the toll on your body that this is taking, good for them. I just hope that everyone stays healthy.
Man.
All right, time for a little more to know before we go. At least 85% of the world's population has already been affected by human-caused climate change, according to new research published in the journal Nature. The findings come ahead of a major UN climate summit taking place in Glasgow later this month.
Back home, the Wyoming coroner in the Gabby Petito case is scheduled to give an update on the final autopsy today. That will likely reveal Petito's cause of death, which we still don't know. The FBI search for her fiancé, Brian Laundrie, has been scaled back after a search of a Florida nature reserve didn't really turn up any new leads. This guy is in the wind, or probably more likely dead, I would say.
The Boston Red Sox beat the Tampa Bay Rays last night to advance to the ALCS. The Sox took the series 3-1 thanks to an offensive clinic that silenced the Rays' pitching.
Also in sports, the NHL returns tonight with a new broadcast partner. Hockey games will be shown on ESPN this year for the first time since 2004. They had been being shown on NBC Sports. There's also a new expansion team this year, the Seattle Kraken.
The Atlantic has been pretty quiet lately, but a storm in the Pacific Ocean is forecast to slam into Mexico this week as a powerful hurricane. Pamela is tracking toward the west coast of Mexico for an expected landfall tomorrow, possibly as a Cat 3. It could pose a flooding risk for Texas later this week.
Hurricane Pam, another terrible name, right? Amazon, finally, the latest big employer to revisit its return to work plans. The Seattle-based company is now going to just empower managers to decide when their direct reports have to come into the office, if they have to come in at all, when those offices reopen next year. But, the longer this goes on, I think the harder it's going to be, as we've talked about, to get people to go back into the office at least regularly, right?
I completely agree with you. Okay, everybody, we're going to leave it there. That is what you need to know for Tuesday, October 12th.
Have a good one, guys.